One of the things you've heard me rant about a couple times in this course is that evolution does not do things for the good of the species. Natural selection does not favor traits because those traits are good for the species as a whole. And one area that we're going to get into here is what's called sexual antagonism. This is one of these areas where natural selection actually favors traits that tend to be bad for a species as a whole, and sometimes quite bad for that species. Males and females have different interests when it comes to reproduction. And so there's going to be a conflict often between the interests of males and the interests of females. So for example, in water striders, males, because sperm is cheap, can mate potentially with lots and lots of females. They can recharge their gametes very rapidly. Females don't benefit by trying to mate with lots and lots and lots of males because they only have a small number of eggs. A few matings, or maybe even one, with a preferred male is enough for her to fertilize all of her eggs. The problem is that male water striders will want to mate with any female they run across, even if she is not interested in mating, even if she is already mating, even if she doesn't need sperm to fertilize her eggs. But the males have been favored by natural selection to be pretty pushy about it. And they will chase females around, interfere with their ability to feed, sometimes accidentally attract predators to them. It puts a reasonably high fitness cost on females that they are constantly being followed around by these male water striders that won't give up trying to mate with them. I should give fair warning, if you are someone who has experienced any kind of sexual violence, you might want to skip over the next few slides, or if you're going to watch them, just be prepared. These slides do not involve examples of humans, and they don't involve anything really graphic, but they do involve some fairly disturbing concepts. In some cases, there is actually an arms race between males and females for which sex controls who mates with who. Females will clearly want to control who they mate with because that decision, that choice, determines which genes, high quality or low quality genes, are going to end up in their offspring. However, natural selection acts on males to try to basically get them to try to control who mates with them. In other words, they want to be able to mate with females, even if the females do not wish to mate with the males. In some cases, this arms race is really pretty nasty. Ducks, in particular, can be violent towards one another when they are trying to mate. Frequently in ponds where you see a lot of ducks cooped up together, during the right season of year, you will see males aggressively pursuing females, grabbing them by the back of the neck, sometimes even pushing them underwater in an attempt to mate with them. And the females are constantly trying to struggle away from these males. Ducks are one of these cases where sexual antagonism is really severe. What you're seeing here is, believe it or not, the penis of a duck. I think this is a Muscovy duck. And the reason that the male has this extraordinary apparatus for mating is that the female has evolved an extraordinarily convoluted and long reproductive tract. Why has the female evolved this really long convoluted reproductive tract? Well, because females with a complex reproductive tract are more difficult to force to mate. Males have a harder time forcing copulations with females if the female has a complex reproductive tract. And so female reproductive tracts evolve to be more and more complicated. That, however, places selection pressure on males. The male ducks have then evolved more and more complicated and longer penises, which help them penetrate the female's reproductive tract. And so this arms race keeps escalating. It's bad for everyone. Basically, you've got a waste of resources on this arms race that could be being put into surviving more readily or having more offspring. There are worse cases. So, for example, in bed bugs, which nobody liked anyway, in bed bugs, the male doesn't even bother to mate normally with the female. Often in species of bugs that are related to bed bugs, what males actually do is when they finish mating with a female, they'll actually glue the female's reproductive tract shut so that no male can mate with her after that. Basically what that does is it ensures that the first male to mate with her is the father of all of her offspring. However, in bed bugs, what's happened is that males have evolved this way of getting around the mating plug, which is what it's called. Mating plug is what happens when a male glues a female's reproductive tract shut. Male bed bugs have evolved to just do away with the normal mating process entirely. They have this sharp reproductive apparatus. They just stab through the female's body wall, and they inject the sperm directly into her body cavity. The sperm float around in her body and eventually find her reproductive tract, enter it, and fertilize her eggs. It's gone so far, in fact, that bed bugs don't even try normal mating anymore. They just go straight to stabbing. There are even some males that will stab through the body wall of other males, inject their sperm into those other males. When those wounded males then maybe find a female and inject sperm into her, they actually end up injecting some of the first male's sperm along with their own. Bedbug sex is really creepy. Similarly, when a male mates with a female, it's in the interest of that male to monopolize her reproductive resources. A mating plug is one example of this. Okay, the male doesn't want the female to mate again, evolutionarily speaking. Natural selection favors males that can prevent her from remating. A male also wants the female he just mated with to spend all of her resources on his offspring, instead of, say, surviving to breed again. In a very elegant experiment, some researchers took fruit flies and they prevented females from evolving in response to the sexually antagonistic changes on the part of males. So the males were basically in the arms race against the females, but the females were kept from participating in the arms race. What evolved over time were these males that were more and more harmful to the females they mated with. They had a lot more offspring. So in these experimental populations here in red, where females were not allowed to evolve, the males ended up being much more successful at reproducing. They had more offspring. But the females tended to die much younger. Okay, so the males were manipulating the female's physiology so that the female would basically rear more offspring for those males, but it came at the price, for many of the female's life. Again, this is the sort of thing that natural selection actually favors that is really bad for a species. And this is going on apparently in a lot of species all the time, that both species are evolving traits that are costly to themselves, and in the case of males, costly to females.